Hey everyone, I hope you're doing good and staying safe. I welcome you all to this interesting session on SQL where versus having clause. In our previous video, we have discussed about group by and order by statements, and in today's session, we'll have a detailed comparison between the where and having clause. Now let's say you're navigating through a huge database and you wish to display only certain records that satisfy a particular condition. Now carrying this search process is extremely difficult and is also time taking. Now in order to save time and make your search easier, we use the where and having clause, which is used to explicitly filter out only those records that meet the conditions specified by the user. More on that soon. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet, consider getting subscribed to our channel SimpliCode to stay updated with all the latest tech content. And hit that bell icon to never miss an update from us. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's topic. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL where clause, and then we'll discuss what is SQL having clause, and then we'll have a detailed in comparison between where and having clause, and finally we'll look at the syntax and implement the execution part in MySQL workbench. So let us now dive into today's topic. So firstly we'll discuss what is where clause. The SQL where clause is used to specify a condition while fetching the data from more than one table or by joining with multiple tables. If the given condition is satisfied, then only it returns a specific value from the table. Now we can use the where clause to filter the records and fetch only the necessary records from our database. The where clause is not only used in the select statement, but it is also used in the update, delete, etc. Let us now understand the syntax. The syntax is simple and is followed as select column 1, column 2, so on from table name where condition. Let us now understand with an example. Consider the employee table here, which is having various columns such as ID, name, age, city and salary. Now let's say if I want to find the employee who is having the maximum salary in this table, and for that I'll write a query stating select star from employee where salary is greater than 50,000. Now if you implement this query, it will basically show those records which is having salary more than 50,000. Now if you look into the table, Abhay Kumar, whose ID is 1175, is having 52,600 which is greater than 50,000. So in this way, where basically meets the condition that is set by the user. Let us now understand what is having clause in SQL. The having clause is generally used along with the group by clause, and having clause is used to filter the results obtained by the group by clause based on some specific condition. Having clause is quite similar to that of where clause, as both are used to filter records in SQL. But where clause cannot be used with the aggregate functions like count, max, sum and etc. Which is why having clause is needed, and that is the reason we use the having clause. Let us now understand the syntax. The syntax is also similar. You have to mention the having keyword here instead of where, and the syntax is followed as select column 1, column 2 from table name, group by column 1, column 2, so on, having, and mention the condition. Now group by clause is used to arrange the data into groups, and having clause is used in the column operations, and it basically group all the identical data and gives you the condition that is specified by the U. Let us understand this with an example. Again, consider the same employee table here, which is having ID, name, age, city and salary. Now as we know, we have to use aggregate functions, so I'm using the average function here, and since the having clause also uses a group by, so that is the reason I'm also using the group by. Now let's say if I want to find the average salary of all the employees from different cities, then the following query would be select city average salary from employee group by city. Now when I perform this query, this will be the following output, where it will show the resultant set of all the cities and their average salary. Now we have New Delhi that is being repeated twice, which is 2 records, and we have Ghaziabad, which is 2 records. Now New Delhi has 2 records which is having salary as 36,000 and 38,000. Now if you consider the average, it is basically 37,000. And similarly for Ghaziabad, we have 3 records which have salaries 46,500, 42,600, 52,600. Now when you calculate the average, it is showing us 47,233. Now that you have applied this, now let us have the having condition here. Now let's say if I want to find the average salary of all those employees from different cities who is having average salary greater than 40,000. Now in this case, if I implement this query, this will be the following output. As you can see, both Ghaziabad and Noida has the average salary more than 40,000, that is 47,233 and 48,000. So in this way, you can use the SQL having clause as well. Let us now look at the differences between these two clauses, that is SQL where and having clause. Now SQL where clause basically filters the individual rows in the table based on the specific condition, whereas the having clause filters groups instead of one row at a time. Now as discussed earlier, where clauses can be used with select, update, delete statement, whereas the having clause can be used only with the select statement. Now where comes before group by, which means that where clause filters rows performing aggregate calculations, and having comes after group by, which means the having clause filters rows after performing aggregate calculations. So consequently, having is slower than where in terms of complexity and efficiency as well. Now as discussed earlier, where clause cannot contain aggregate functions, and having clause can contain aggregate functions such as count, sum, average, etc. Now SQL where is considered as a pre-filter because it performs the row operations first, and having clause is considered as the post-filter because it performs the column operations after grouping the data. So now that we have understood about these both types of SQL clauses, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for the execution part.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
So as you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side you can view the SimpliCode database, which is having different tables such as customer, department, employee, employees one, and etc. Now to perform the where and having clause statements, we'll use the employees one table. So let me just display the records present in that table. So I'll use the select operator, select star from employee one table. Click on the execute button. As you can see, the employees one table has various columns such as employee ID, first name, last name of the employee, their email ID, phone numbers, hiring date, job ID, salary, manager ID, and department ID. So firstly, let us discuss about the where clause, or basically where condition. So let's say if we want to fetch the records of all those employees from these employees one table whose salary is let's say less than 5,000 and they belong to department 30. So in that case, the following query would be select star from employees table 1 where salary is less than 5,000. Now I'm using the AND operator, which is basically a logical operator. So whenever you're performing the where condition, you can use the logical operators and comparison operators, logical operators such as AND, OR, between, etc. And the comparison operators like less than, equal to, less than, greater than, equals to, etc. So I'm using the AND operator here, and department ID is equals to 30. So let me execute this statement and see the output. So as you can see, there are a total of 4 employees whose salary is less than 50,000 and they belong to the department 30. Now you can also, as discussed earlier, you can also perform the update operations using the where clause as well. Now let's say if I want to update the salary of employee who is having employee ID 116 as let's say 10,000, then the query would be update table name, that is employee 1, set salary equals to 10,000 where employee ID is equals to let's say 116, and the employee name is Shelly Baida. So I'm just taking that example. So let me just execute this query. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed. So let me just verify whether it is executed or not. So I'll use the select statement, select star from employee 1 where employee ID equals to 116. So let me run this query and we'll see the output. So as you can see, the employee Shelly Baida, who's having employee ID 116, and their salary has been changed into 10,000 here successfully. So in this way you can use the where clause as well. You can also use the where clause for delete also. Now let's say if I want to delete the details of the employee who's having employee ID as 120, let's say, then I'll use the delete statement. Delete from employee 1 where employee ID is equals to 127. So let me just execute this query. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed here, and the details of the employee who's having employee ID as 127 has been deleted successfully. So in this way you can use the where clause to perform various operations such as select, update, delete, etc. using comparison and logical operators. Let us now understand about the having clause. For that, let me take an example. Let's say if you want to display the records of all those employees present in different departments and whose average salary is greater than, let's say, 5,000. So in that case, the following query would be select. Now I want to display the department ID, so I'm taking the department ID column, average salary from employees 1. Now as you know, while using the having clause, we have to use the group by statement as well. So I'll group by all the department IDs since we have multiple department IDs present in the table. Department ID having average salary greater than $5,000. Okay, let me just display the output. So our query has been successfully executed, and as you can see here, it is displaying all the different departments and their average salaries as well here. Now I can use the different aggregate functions here as well. If I want to count the number of employees in each department, I can take the count function. So let me just use it. Count employee ID, which will basically count all the total employees in the different departments. So let me just execute this statement. So as you can see, it will display the count of all the employees that are present in different departments and having average salary more than 50,000. So in this way you can use the having clause as well. Now we can also combine both the where condition as well as the having condition as well. Now we can combine the where and having clause together in a select query. In this case, the where clause is used first to filter individual rows, and then the rows are then grouped to perform the aggregate calculations, and finally the having clause is used to filter the grouped data, that is the identical groups that are having the same values. Now as discussed earlier, we have to use the where condition before the group by. So I am just taking the where clause before the group by. And let's say if I want to display only those departments that are having more than 80 as the department ID. So department ID greater than 80. So let me just display. So as you can see, it will display only those records where the department ID is more than 80, that is 90, 100 and 110. And the details of all the employees whose average salary is more than 500. Now I can also use the order by statement here in order to mention all these records in a systematic manner, that is an ascending or descending order. So order by department ID. So let us execute this query. So as you can see, it will showcase the department ID values in the ascending order, that is 90, 100 and 110. So in this way, you can use the having clause as well in SQL. Now that brings to the end of the session, guys. I hope you've understood both the having and where clause. Thank you for watching the video, guys. I hope you found this tutorial informative and helpful. If you have any further queries regarding any of the topics covered in today's session, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, and a team of experts will be more than happy to help resolve all your queries at the earliest. Until next time, stay safe and keep coding.